Sophie Budd from Taste Buds Cooking Studio. I'm going to show you how to make a beautiful light potato gnocchi with a really simple tomato and pesto dressing. So the first thing I've done is peeled 4 of these lovely big royal blue potatoes. I've cut them into even size and put them into cold water with a big pinch of salt. Now, when you're cooking potatoes and you're boiling them, you want to put them into cold water and bring them to boil. If you pour boiling hot water onto them, the outside will crumble off and you'll get crunchy middle bits. So I've boiled them, drained them, and they're just sitting in the colander steaming away, and I'm getting rid of the excess moisture. So while they're sitting there steaming, I'm going to make my sauce. So in my pan, I'm going to put a good slug of olive oil. This is quite an oil-based dressing, so there's quite a lot in there. Next, I've got some little cherry tomatoes. I'm going to cut them into quarters while my oil is warming up. So I'm going to go in with the tomatoes. Make sure you get all the juicy bits as well. While they're sizzling away, I'm going to tell you about this pesto that I've made. I've just used fresh basil, and a lot of people use pine nuts for pesto, but I love using lots of different nuts. I've got some roasted hazelnuts and a couple of cloves of garlic and a nice big pinch of parmesan. So I'm going to put a big dollop of pesto into the pan and just mix it with the spoon. I'm frying the pesto in the pan and getting a bit of heat into there. We've got a little bit of raw garlic in there, so I do need to cook out the pesto a little bit. I use roasted hazelnuts because they already have that lovely roasted flavour. I find pestos made with sort of nuts that aren't toasted don't have a great deal of flavour in them. And that smells incredible. Okay, I'm happy with that. I'm going to warm it up later. So I'm just going to put it to the side and we're going to make the gnocchi. I'm going to start with sprinkling some flour on my board. And the potatoes have stopped steaming now. Just make sure there's no water in the bottom of the pan. If there is, just discard it. Now, this is a little bit vintage. This is called a mouli. I'm going to tip the spuds into the mouli and wind it round. I'll just lift it up so you can see what's happening just there. I'm going to scrape off the bottom. Now, I'm going to tip that moulied potato onto the flour. Now, the reason I love using a royal blue for gnocchi is it's really light and fluffy and crumbly. I'm going to spread it out a little bit. There's a few key things to making gnocchi. You want the potato to be warm, not too hot, and you want to make sure it doesn't cool down, because when it cools down it gets a little bit sticky and it doesn't work so well. So a big pinch of salt, and an egg. I'm going to put some parmesan through as well, already grated, and then the flour. Now you just need a little thing like this. Another good tool to make gnocchi is a paint scraper. And I'm going to cut the egg through the potato and the flour. Just keep chopping and bringing it together like this. You can't cheat and put it into a food processor or mixer, any kind of food processor, because what happens is you've got starch in the potato and gluten in the flour, and if you overwork the two of those, you end up with little rubber bullets. And what I'm looking for is that all of the potato and the egg and the flour are really well combined. Okay, now it's nicely combined. I'm going to roll it into a piece, and I'm just squashing it and compacting it so there's no air bubbles in the middle. And then just sitting it to the side of the board, sprinkle a bit of flour on your bench, make sure you've got some flour on your hands, and just take off a little piece of the gnocchi. Squash it together in your hands into a little sausage, and then on the floured board, starting from the tip of your finger, you're going to roll it all the way down and all the way up again. There's no pressure at all. If you squash it, it gets all uneven and falls apart. I'm going to roll it to about that thickness, and then you take the back of your cutter, cut and pull away. Little pillows of gnocchi. I'm going to cook this straight away, but if I was going to leave it for quite a long time, I'd get a wooden board with some semolina, some fine semolina, and I'd sit it on there. Gnocchi sticks to everything. If you just leave it on flour, it will absorb the flour and stick to the bench or the board. Okay, so now I've rolled my gnocchi and I've given my hands a bit of a wash. I've got a pot of boiling water, and I'm going to put a massive pinch of salt in there. Seasoning your water when you're boiling gnocchi and pasta really adds flavour to the pasta. Going to bring back the sauce and start to warm that through. When you're making fresh pasta and gnocchi, it's really important to have your sauce hot and ready to go before you start cooking it. The gnocchi is only going to take a couple of minutes to cook, and you want to make sure that it's going into a hot sauce. If your sauce is cold and you put your cooked gnocchi in, by the time your sauce is warmed up, it's overcooked. Okay, so I'm going to drop the gnocchi in a slotted spoon. Depending on the size of your pot, you can do about 10 or 12 at a time. And when the gnocchi floats to the top, it's ready. You want to be quite quick, because if you're too slow, it can overcook. Don't worry about the excess water in there. If you're going to use a wooden spoon, just be really gentle. They're very delicate and you don't want to break them up in the sauce. And then a final warm of the sauce in the pan. When it goes a little bit cold, it can get quite thick, especially with all the starch in there. If you're feeling like it's a little bit thick, you can just add some of the water from the pan to loosen up your sauce. Just going to let that bubble for a couple of seconds. And then, this is very family style, this dish. So I'm going to put it onto a platter so everyone at the table can help themselves. And it just needs to be finished with some fresh Parmesan. And I like a little dribble of olive oil. Now that's perfect on its own, or you can serve it with some lovely salad and maybe some crusty bread.